That's it, recording. Hello and welcome to this IsleVote21 online meeting for the Isle of Wight County Council seat of East Cowes. Before we begin, a non-standard bit of preamble. We're doing this interview quite late because Karl was unable to attend earlier invitations because of personal circumstances that I was very sympathetic to. And Karl has asked to have a later interview, and I have facilitated because the idea is getting people to know their local councillors more than anything else. So back to the standard preamble. A brief word for the benefit of the public. IsleVote21 has been formed with the sole purpose of enhancing democracy by providing an unbiased platform for candidates. We have no affiliations or funding, and no candidates are aware of what questions will be asked today, although a list of topics was distributed in advance to enable candidates to prepare. All 138 candidates in this year's County Council election have been invited, either directly or via group and party leaders. The following candidates were invited to this meeting: Jane Rann, Conservative Party; Karl Love, Independent; Bob Packham, Liberal Democrats; and Lorna Trollope from the Labour Party. And joining me is Karl Love.
Good morning.
Candidates will be asked questions from our pool of questions, plus others that have been submitted by the public regarding island-wide issues and their specific locality. Candidates have been informed that there's a 2-minute limitation on answers. I will raise my hand as we approach that time, and I request that the candidate finishes up promptly afterwards. Before that commences, candidates have 2 minutes to give a personal statement. So Karl, please go ahead and get ready for the hand. That's it. Okay, thank you, Karl.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I am currently the East Cowes ward representative for County Council, and obviously a town councillor as well. And I've really enjoyed being a part of that experience over the last 4 years really. And I never really set out to be a politician. I'm not a natural politician, but I am a natural community development worker. Spent all of my life working with the community, and of course being a councillor is just a little bit of an extension of that. It's community development in a different way, assuming that you do the job properly. And the one thing that I have always tried to do is make sure that I engage with my community. I'm out there, I'm listening to them. I can't always be everything that they want me to be, and I can't do all of the things that people would like me to do, but I can at least try and listen to that and try to represent that in some sort of way as and when it's appropriate. And so I really enjoy politics, and I'm grateful that people elected me, and I'm looking forward to hopefully standing and representing you again in this election. So yeah, I mean, what more is there to say really, is that politics should be fun, engaging, and we'll see what happens in just a few days.
All right, Karl, perfect. Yeah, what more is there to say? I think you've done a cracking job there. And I guess from what you've said, you'll like the first question. Yeah. How can residents become more confident and engaged with the council's decision-making processes?
I think this is one of my greatest concerns. I mean, I've always said that that we're not transparent enough as an Isle of Wight council, and I absolutely hate it when people go into closed sessions. I mean, what we've actually seen is a backwards step, I think, since I came into politics some 4 years ago, where we've seen politics and engagement shut down really. In the the timing of politics, our meetings used to be previously, I'm told, at 6 and 7 o'clock, whereas now they actually put them at 5 and 6 o'clock, which is just not enough time to allow people to get home, get comfortable and get engaged. But even that process can be dull. I would like to see a more open approach where people are allowed to admit questions. We have all this wonderful technology available to us. We should be live streaming all meetings now, and we should allow the members of the public to actually intervene. As you know, once you've had your 15 minutes at the beginning, people are not allowed to then engage with any of the politics and ask their questions. So I want to see that more integrated. I think that consultation is about much more than just sending out a bit of paper and going online and asking questions. You've got to get out there, meet with people, locally. One of the things that I did like about the Conservatives was cabinet on the road, but I think that that also needs to apply for the county council as well. We need to start getting out there and engaging. Politics in this country in terms of engagement are set up from the, the 1500s. Oliver Cromwell would recognise some of the way that we do business, and that needs to be changed, rapidly changed. But I don't believe in closed sessions. I believe that we should really, really get into the community. Even a yes, thank you. Even a an X Factor style where people are allowed to make comments throughout the discussions and ask members, rather than having to ask all their questions at the beginning, are allowed to interact at the end as well. So it's a different approach, and that's something that I really would like to look into.
Super. All right. Thank you very much. I mean, you'll not be surprised to hear that I approve of that kind of answer. More engagement is what we need, and building trust and so on and so forth. I think the council has very difficult decisions to make, and if people don't trust the decisions that come out at the end, then we're really in trouble.
And that really does disappoint me. I have to say that people don't trust people. I mean, it's most of us that are in local politics are not. We're not career politicians in local politicians. We're just ordinary people that try to represent the public, and we need to be more engaging. Sadly, some of the parties shut down that, as we've seen in this IL21 debate.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Karl. So on to the next question. Can you name one policy area that the council should lobby central government for?
I'm still, I think the most critical thing is to actually try to get this island deal. I think that's absolutely essential. And the reason being that, since government started with removing and cutting our budgets in austerity, they've cut now so much money from the council. A tiny little island like ours just doesn't have the number of residents here to generate the amount of money which we require to operate all of the different services. So we're always going to be chasing the tail, really, so as to say. We need to, desperately need to get Bob Seeley and everybody to lobby for that island deal. Just even a few £1 million would make all the difference to the island, because otherwise there is no other option. Whatever administration comes in, they have to cut, because there simply isn't anywhere to generate that money from, because we haven't invested in significant quantities over the year to be able, well, not just over the year, but over the years, to generate income in our own right. So the government has moved us from a provider of services to actually income generating in order to support those services. And so it's vital that the government gives us some money for that additional cost that it costs for our island, because otherwise there is no choice but to raise taxes, no matter what administration comes in the current state. So that would be the priority: getting an island deal, getting a fair deal from the funding settlements.
Okay, super. Thank you very much, Karl. Next question. This one has been submitted by a member of the public through our online survey. What can be done to improve educational aspiration for residents of all ages?
Yeah, I think education is one of those subjects. I'm an educationalist by professional. So I'm a youth and community worker who became a teacher trainer and trained governors and a whole range of different teachers over the years. Not necessarily on the island particularly. Most of my teacher training went on when I left the island. The system, again, is a system that actually is based on mass education rather than personalised education. There's been some efforts over the years to personalise education, and obviously the internet makes a big difference now. But we really do need to have the jobs and create the employment to be so diverse that we can encourage people to do the careers and opportunities that they want. It's disappointing that the education system on the island has stood still, and we know why that is, in part anyway. It's for the same reason that I came to the island. is that if you don't have a throughput of new dynamic people with new ideas, then you train people to do the same old thing if it's internalized, and which is what's happened on the island over many years. We need new teachers coming through to inspire young people, but we also need the courses at our colleges and universities to provide different types of learning. I mean, you know, Platform One, I think, is a really great project. You know, the island needs to focus on what it does well and then provide the learning opportunities for that. I'm not against people going off the island, as some would suggest that they need to stay on the island, to go and learn new things, have new life experiences, but then hopefully come back to the island and bring those new skills and ideas with them. That's what we should be doing. So the inspiration for us is making sure that there is enough learning resource there on the island with high quality teachers and deliverers and community projects to be able to move forward. That's what we need. That's the way forward.
Super, great answer, Karl. Thank you very much. Okay, one more, which is also from the public. 1 in 5 people have a disability, equating to around 28,000 island residents having some form of disability or long-term illness. What commitment will you give to reduce the inequalities for disabled people on the island with a view to improving facilities, services, and employment for disabled residents and visitors?
Thank you. Equality, inclusion, diversity are things which I know a lot about personally in many different ways. You know, I'm dyslexic, and that's a different type of, well, someone would say disability. I've always seen it as a strength because it makes me the person that I am. And that is what we have to do, is that we have to turn people's difference into a strength. And we have to enable it so that people can work properly in the occupations that they choose, not the occupations which are accessible. Because we have to make all occupations accessible rather than saying you've got a disability and we've got to find a way around it. Well, actually, we've got to do more than that. It shouldn't be in that criteria, if you like, from the beginning. We put the person first, their abilities obviously are important to the particular job that they're doing, but their accessibility should be right at the front. So if you're the right person for the job, you are the right person for the job, no matter what your ability or disability is. So I've spent a lot of my life sitting on, well, they were called different things at particular times, but I sat on the equality panel for Kent County Council. In those days, it was, oh, well, we need somebody that's gay, we need somebody that's got a disability. So Karl fitted the priority. I think it depends whether if you've got and that's why I ended up there. And to be honest, that's why I ended up doing HIV work on the island, because they didn't know anybody else. So because they wanted a gay person, and they hadn't got the, if you like, the intuitivity to go out there and recruit, you know, in a more diverse way. So, you know, all jobs should be accessible. I really do think that there are things we can do on the island. You know, we still need to make sure that our public spaces are fitted with, you know, better accessibility, ramps, you know, pavements that are lowered and so on. Our buses now do all of those things, but it's painfully slow. So getting the person into the right job is the most important thing. And I know you put your hand up, so I'm going to have to stop. But you know, it's something that I'm really, really, but it's right at the forefront for me as far as I'm concerned, because I've experienced it.
Okay, thank you very much. And referring back to the question itself, as you can see, you know, 1 in 5 people, 28,000 island residents. I mean, this is headline stuff, isn't it? It shouldn't be something which is bolted onto policies and plans afterwards. It really needs to be forefront, doesn't it?
It's not a bolt-on. For me, it's not a bolt-on. I have to live it in a different way from people that are physically disabled. Yeah. And so, therefore, I don't like to see my disability. I like to see what I bring to the debate, and that's what's important. You put the person before the disability and you enable them to access the things that they need to access to do the job.
Thank you, Karl. Next one, a hot topic for most parts of the island. Again, this is a public question. What will you do to address all the empty shops in each town? The main streets are dying. What should the council do to specifically address this issue?
Now, this is a really complex question, isn't it, really? Because of the world that we live in, which is changing. We have to accept that the world is changing. So our town centres need to be more than just a shopping area. They need to be a communal area, which is what they've always been, because people have always flooded to those areas. So we are going to have to accept that our town centres are going to be smaller in future if we currently can, continue in the way that we are doing with online shopping. It's a fact. So what we need to do is make sure that we consolidate into the centres wherever we can, and we can incentivise small shops by reducing rates, etc. But then it's easy to say reduce rates, but then you've got to come back to this small island where we actually don't, we don't generate enough money to power the services as it is. So it's a really complex thing. So we could reduce rates, and a lot of small shops are already on, get tax relief on their businesses. So you could say, well, we'll have free parking. I think free parking, if you've got central car parks, is a good idea in the centre of town. But again, you still end up in this catch-22. It's really complex. You have to make sure that the shops that are there are providing the services that people want. That's the most important thing, and that the council could actually take over some more of those shops and empower people and put community projects in there to run shops. We've seen the growth of lots of community shops in different villages and things. So it's really complex. There is no easy thing. I mean, I can talk about greening up the centres of towns and planting lots of flowers and plants and making them so that more inviting. But you wouldn't go out for a Sunday afternoon walk in the centre of town unless you lived in the centre of a city. So we've got to do, it needs a lot more thought. My own town of East Cowes is particularly struggling. A big shopping centre, even though it's an island gateway. But we need to try and do as much as we can to encourage them. So I'm really in favour of, community markets and so on. But then you've got to ask your question, will community markets bring people in to shop in the other shops, or will they simply shop on those community markets? I come from a very poor family, so I always put price first ahead of anything. When I go shopping, I'm a bit of a miser. I'm not going to buy a shirt or a pair of jeans at 70 quid if I can get them for £29. That's how I shop. So it's important that we get the shops that are selling the right things. If people want to buy more expensive clothes and so on, that's great. I've got no problems with that. I'm just saying that it's a complex problem, and I don't know what the answer really is in the long term, apart from trying to ensure that our tourists come to those places. And that's through, we used to have a big market in Newport, didn't we, down at Coppins Bridge all those years ago, where the coaches came in. They don't do quite the same thing now, do they? So perhaps we need to have a little bit of strategic thinking about that.
Okay, Karl, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree that it is a complex problem, and you do need to make the towns, the shops need to fit the setting. There's no use in having high-end shops in places where people don't have the money and so on. So there is a lot to do. I mean, speaking personally, I like a great deal the idea of getting community centres into the town. If you want to have people in the town, then literally physically get the people into the town, and community projects can do that. Okay, so that's gone pretty quickly. The last question, Karl, and then I'll give you a chance to wrap up as you like. Okay.
Yeah.
Knowing your local community as you do, what local issue would you like to address that is of concern to residents?
Well, he laughs straight away, although it's not a laughing matter, is it? The floating bridge, why is the floating bridge so important? Well, it's important because it's the connectivity between two communities of Cowes. I mean, Cowes is one place, but two communities, East and West Cowes. It's important to the people because there are families on both sides of that river that have grown up around shipbuilding and a whole host of other tourism and so on. So, and the other reason is because the floating bridge currently at the moment, you know, it's approaching somewhere in the region of about £8 million that we've spent on that floating bridge, which is more than the total savings of required by austerity, £3.1 million for this entire year's budget. So it's shedding money at a rate which is unsustainable. To the local people, we want it replacing. It has to be replaced with some kind of viable solution. And I'm thinking an all-electric vessel instead of diesel as we currently have, based on Floating Bridge 5, is the way forward. There's lots of arguments about tunnels and bridges and so on, but I have to live within what is a realistic budget, and it's cheaper to build a floating bridge, which we know works and can be easily done, than it is to build tunnels or bridges. And that brings in all kinds of other safety aspects as well. So the people of this town really want that bridge fixing, because it's doing our reputation a huge amount of damage. You know, it facilitates not just East and West Cowes, but the whole of the north end of the island. And every taxpayer on this island is paying for it. So that's why it's so important locally, because our towns, you know, we talk about the regeneration of our towns. You need people in those towns. If they can't get from A to B, then that takes away the footfall. And that means then that those towns suffer in all kinds of other ways. And our young people, you know, are involved in all kinds of cross-river sports, events and so on, going to school. It's incredibly important, but it's not the only issue in East Cowes, because we know that we are a centre of regeneration and engineering and technology for the future. That's why we've got a technology park here. So we need to, you know, we talked about education before. We need to make sure that we've got the jobs here which are of high enough status and pay sufficient money so that it can inspire people right across the island. So that bridge is important to all of that. And that's why it's the most single important thing. So, you know, and I know people keep saying, you just keep going on and on and on about it. Well, I know how to replace that bridge. That bridge made money before this bridge came in. So we know it makes about 200,000 a year. So we use that income in a new floating bridge to pay for loans. So we borrow and then we feed it back. It's not, this administration sees it as a cash cow. It was meant to make money for the council. Well, I'm saying it's a local crossing for local people. So we reinvest that money into a new floating bridge, and then we can support that. And we take the old floating bridge up the river, we turn it into a wonderful Tracy Island, and we have it as a wedding venue and, you know, and a fantasy island where people can, you know, we take all the money from the yachties who come in once a year, tow it out into the bay, have lots of wild parties and things, and make money from it. And it doesn't cost us anything because it's anchored and moored in Isle of Wight Council property up the river. So why not? I told you.
Okay. All right, Karl. So you weren't sitting on the fence then. I think it was pretty explicit. You're saying go ahead, scrap the existing one, and reinvest the potential revenues from it into a new floating bridge without question. Start on day one. Yes.
That's how I feel about it.
Okay.
Because I know that I've got support from other independents, but I don't know that I've got universal support. But what other option is there? There comes a point when you cannot carry on with something that is eating up cash at the rate this is.
Well, I mean, I worked in engineering all my life, and prior to moving back to the Isle of Wight, where I'm now house daddy. And when the floating bridge first came along and they started having trouble, I said, look, everybody relax, don't worry. It's teething trouble. It's all going to be fine. Of course, there's going to be snags at the beginning. Yeah. I will eat my words. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. And now it is evident that, I mean, in the last few days, there's been 2 snags, hasn't there? Just in the last couple of days. So.
I think the trouble is, it's the Secret Service approach that this administration takes towards it. I and Laura Wilcox are the local members, and we know very little about what their actual plans are for the future. And that's what's wrong. You were talking about trusting people earlier, you know, and trusting politicians. Everything is done behind closed doors, and it should not be done that way unless it's absolutely necessary to protect, you know, confidentiality of individuals. And this is not transparent. It is, you know, if they would tell me more about what was happening, I might be less reactional. But I'm really cross about it because there is a solution, and they're hiding behind redacted statements of litigation and you know, and legal matters, when actually that's a separate issue to one side. You could sit down, as I am with you now, and say, actually, Karl, we're going to replace it. It's got nothing to do with legalities. We'll deal with that as a separate, but they won't. So why won't they? There's just something there. And I will say there's something there that we don't know that is being protected for some particular reason.
Okay, somewhere in that 1,000-page document that's locked in the basement. Okay, Karl, thank you very much for that. So to draw it to a close, would you like to make one more statement?
You know, the people of East Cowes know me really, really well. I know that there are lots of people right across the island who don't really know me very well, and why should they? To be honest, you know, I'm just a small-time local politician who's trying to make a difference, and that's why I came into this, to make a difference. The truth is, I'm a natural community worker, and so being a politician is just an extension of what I've always done. For 40 years, I've been doing community development projects of one sort or another, and as I've got older, I've got a bit longer in the tooth, and a bit more directive in how I deal with things, and that's all based on my learning. I'm not promising to be something that I'm not. I haven't got all the answers. I don't know about all of the policies. It's impossible for one person to do that. But I do know that I work 50 hours a week, but we should be listening to the experts, and they should be advising us wisely. And we should also be listening to experts that are not within Isle of Wight Council, that, you know, that come in to do specific projects and make them accountable for things, which is where the failure is with the floating bridge. There was no accountability for that project, either in its specific development at the beginning. And that's why litigation is a problem, because there's too many different elements to actually. So for me, you know, the island is a wonderful place. I fell in love with it. And I just think when we moved here in 1992, and I just think that we've got a massive future around, well, biosphere, and we're a perfect test bed for places. We're seeing these e-scooters all over the island, although there's a lot of controversy about them at the particular moment because they're not, you know, there isn't enough safeguarding around them. The sad thing is that we're doing this trial and we're not getting a penny from it, and we've got these e-scooters all over our pavements, all over the place, and nothing's. We can't afford to do that in this world now. We have to take some money from that organisation to pay for their parking on our pavements and the inconvenience. So I'm saying to you that you know, I'm going to have fun in this election. I'm hoping that we will see a new administration, or certainly a much closer division in terms of voting numbers, because that's how we force any administration to make the changes that the people want, not just what I want.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much, Karl. I've enjoyed that, and good luck later this week. It's coming soon, huh?
We shall see. I'll be glad when it's over this time, I must admit. So I will be glad when it's over this time.
Okay.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and get out there and vote, folks.